Welcome to Season 2 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. On the show, we'll look at the who, what, where, why, when, and how of moving out of your education career and into a life you love. In this season, we'll meet ex-teachers who have taken their hobbies and passions from outside of education and created a new career for themselves. We'll talk to people who can support and inspire us as we make the transition and work on identifying the legacy we want to leave in the world. So come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 11. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm very pleased to be interviewing David Wright. Welcome, David.
Hi Elizabeth, how are you today?
Good, thanks. So David, tell us your story. What got you into teaching in the first place?
Okay, I grew up on a farm and I was always under engine bonnets and on tractors and playing motorbikes. And when I went to high school and we did manual arts, metalwork and woodwork and technical drawing, I was just so in my element, I fell in love with the whole idea of being a teacher of manual arts. And when I finished school, I got a job as an apprentice in a metal trade. I did 4 years as an apprentice, and I don't know about any of your listeners, but I know the year out of high school when I went from 9 to 3 to sort of 7 to 5, and 4 weeks a year holiday instead of 10 weeks a year holiday.
It's a bit of a shock to the system, isn't it?
It was culture shock. And I thought to myself, when I'm finished this apprenticeship, I'm going to apply to become a manual arts teacher because I loved manual arts at school. So that's what I want to do as a career path.
Wow. So you actually got qualified and then went back.
Well, qualified as a metal trade.
Yeah.
And then I did it. It was funny. They had a 2-year course when anybody that hadn't got a trade could do a 3-year course. So we got a year's exemption for the fact that we'd done a 4-year apprenticeship. But then in that 2 years at college, we actually had to do one extra subject each semester to qualify. So we didn't really get any time off at all, but yeah, it felt like it.
Okay.
So yes, I was in my early 20s when I started teaching as a manual arts teacher.
And where were you? You're in Australia?
Yes. So I live in Queensland, and I was in Bundaberg as a student at a high school in 1972, and my first posting in 1982 was back at that school as a manual arts teacher.
Fantastic. A nice full circle.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a beautiful part of the world. I've actually been to Bundaberg.
Yep.
So about 31 years ago it was.
Yeah.
I was pregnant with my first child. We went up there for a little holiday. We were heading for Cairns, and as we went up the map, we had a paper map back then.
Yep.
We realised that the scale of the map of Queensland was different to the scale of the New South Wales map, and it was taking us about 3 times as long to travel an inch up the map. And so we decided we better stop in Bundaberg.
It's as far from Brisbane to Cairns as it is from Brisbane to Melbourne. It's only the halfway point. Yeah.
It's a big state, that's for sure. Well, that's a nice little bit of info for our international listeners who might not be familiar with the geography. Okay, yep. So you started teaching. What year level were you teaching, David?
Well, high school, and in those days it was 13-year-olds to 17-year-olds, so 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. In Queensland now they have year 7s as well, but that only started a couple of years ago. And I think the first year I did have some 16-year-olds, but they mainly, because I was a first year out teacher, I got the junior grade, so 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And I think any teacher would know that 14-year-olds is just their absolute favourite year not to have to teach.
Yes, I'm sure.
You try and think of your worst nightmare as a teacher, it would be year 9, maths, last period of the day in a hot summer's day. That's about as bad as it can get.
Oh, I have strong memories. I was just telling you before the recording about one of my worst days of teaching was with a year 9 geography class. Yep. Anyway, that's another story for another day.
Yep. I can certainly remember some lessons that I probably would have rather been not there. In fact, I think on my third school, I only taught at 4 schools, but my third one, I was there for nearly 15 years. And I remember I had a grade 10 veggie maths class. I used to call it veggie maths because it was like the lower end of the spectrum.
Yep.
And there was this
I was in.
one particular girl who was just did not want to be there, and she was making my life hell. And I'm thinking, why am I here? What am I doing here?
And so that must have been, if you were there that long, that must have been close to the end of your career when you taught in the fourth school then.
I taught for 20 years and 1 term in total. And yes, I did 2 years as a newbie at the school in Bundaberg. I did 3 years country service, sort of a couple of hours west of Bundaberg. And then I did 14 and a half years in a little town called Corroy, just inland from Noosa. And then my last year and a quarter, they sent me to a school that was basically at Noosa. And when before they built that school, we used to get the students from that area at Corroy. And when they announced that school, we all threw a party and rejoiced because the kids from that area were just, the kids you didn't want to teach. And they sent me there, and I lasted a year and a term, and that was it. I could not go another day.
Right. So that was my next question. What was the tipping point for getting you out of teaching then?
It's funny, when I went to teachers college, the third week at college, they sent us out to prac school for I don't know how many weeks. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, I don't know that this is really what I want to do with the rest of my life. But I've started the course, so I'm going to finish it. And apparently later that year, my father-in-law was contacted by Bundaberg Sugar, where I'd done my apprenticeship, to see if I wanted a job. And he said, no, he doesn't. He's at teachers college. And I was pretty angry because I would have gone.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Oh,
but anyway, I got the qualification as a school teacher. I went looking for a job in a metal trade. There weren't any jobs available. I was offered a job as a teacher. So 20 years later, I got out.
Oh, wow. Okay. So was it the kids, like the behavior, was that really the tipping point for you?
A lot of things. I think every teacher will understand the garbage that comes from above. Every year it's like, oh, we've got a new leader and a new theory and a new concept, and throw everything out that you've done before and we're going to do it differently. And it's like, you've just put a whole compendium of graphics, drawings and woodwork jobs and throw it all out and start again. So that was really frustrating. But when you walk into a classroom, and any one of your listeners would know, if you're out in the playground, I'll call it the playground, you can talk to the kids, have a joke with them, everything's fine. You walk into the classroom, they walk into the classroom, and a wall goes up. And it's just like, we don't listen, we don't pay attention. And I think now it would be even worse. But the attitude of, I don't want to be here, this sucks, there's no respect for you, there's no respect for each other, there's no respect for their environment. They're just angry, and they don't want to be there. And it's just toxic. And just recently, they've been talking a lot in the news about how Australian education standards are falling behind the rest of the world. And they're saying, what are we doing wrong in our education? What we're teaching kids. And I'm going, there's nothing wrong with the curriculum. Go and look at the attitudes in society. Look at the attitudes in the household. If you went to Japan or China or somewhere like that, the kids want to learn. The teachers they sit next to God. Here in Australia, there's just no desire. If nobody wants to be there, they'd rather go and play on their Xbox, and its attitudes are just totally wrong.
And that's something I see a lot when I'm talking to teachers who want to leave the profession. It's that lack of respect and that lack of acknowledgement of their professionalism that is a really big driver for people wanting to get out.
Yep. One of the things that I really felt as a teacher was loneliness. You go into a classroom with, well, in my case, there was usually 24 kids because that's how many spaces there were at a metalwork or a woodwork room.
Right.
Whether it was 24 or 30 in a maths class, because I had maths as a second subject. And it was you on your own, and all day long you'd be running from one class to another class to another class, and morning tea and lunch you might say, have a chat with the other teachers in your staff room. But it was a really lonely profession. And I just feel there's so little support for teachers in classrooms, it's just not funny. And nobody ever came to say, do you need a hand, or how could we help you in your role as this leader in the classroom?
Yeah.
Just really not a great environment at all. And I knew right from the word go that it was not a lifetime career for me, and I certainly had no inspiration to go climbing the corporate ladder.
Wow. So you stuck it out all that time nonetheless, David.
I owe. It's off to work I go. It's a
Yeah.
mortgage and a young family, and you do what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then eventually the toxic environment kind of got too much.
Yep.
How did you actually leave? Like, what was the circumstances of you actually leaving?
At the beginning, it was 2002, and I had a metalwork class. I think they were year 9s, 14-year-olds. And one of the other teachers in the staff room said to me, look, I'll let you know there's a particular boy in one of your classes. He has had the police to every teacher he has had right through primary school and high school. And just let you know that he's a professional and he means trouble. He is trouble. And I said, I've been teaching 20 years. I won't have a problem. Not a problem at all. It won't be an issue. I was pretty laid back and easygoing. I had to get through my days, so I tried to be as laid back as I possibly could. I think it would have been the first week there was a boy entertaining some friends sitting on a metalwork bench. They weren't doing what they were supposed to do. And at that time, teenagers like wearing their pants, like the boys, so far down that their bum would be hanging out the top of their pants. And I was forever saying to them, pull your pants up. I don't want to see your bum.
Yeah.
Anyway, this boy was entertaining his mates and his pants were right down. So I went and pulled his pants right up high. And all of his mates thought it was the funniest thing. And I thought nothing of it. Yeah. Went on about teaching. And at that point, it was first week of school. I knew no names, no faces. It was just, getting started for the term. As that term went on, a particular boy began to become to my attention that he was a law unto himself. Did what he liked, when he liked, never did any work. And 2 days before Easter holidays 2002, he came to me and said, I'm going to the toilet. And I said, it's 5 minutes to the bell, you can wait. And off he went, and he came back. And I said, I told you that you could wait. And I'm not going to say on your podcast exactly the words that he used on me, but he called me some rather unsavory things. And I thought, you know what, I am not going to tolerate. I just said, I am never going to be your teacher again. Go to the office. I'll come over later and we'll work out what other arrangement, because I am not going to have you in a class again.
Yeah.
The busyness of the day, basically it was 3 o'clock, the end of the day, when I even remembered that I'd sent him. I rang administration and said, I need to come and talk to you about this particular kid. And the response that I got on the phone seemed a little odd. It was like, yes, you need to come and talk to us. So I went over, and here's the principal, the senior mistress, and the deputy principal greeting me at the office door. And I thought, this is odd. I went in, and they said to me, is it true that you've had your finger down this boy's pants?
Oh my gosh.
And I thought for a moment, what? And then I thought, oh, I said, yes, I have, actually. I pulled his pants up. And it was like, stop right there. You're going to have to write everything down. It's like, and I just thought, you are joking. So the next day, the last day of term, we're cleaning up the workshop, putting jobs away. And I asked some kids to pack up some jobs and hang some clamps up. I walked out of the room for 2 minutes, came back in, and here was this job smashed on the floor. And I just broke. I just thought, you know what? I can't do this anymore. During the vacation, I actually had to go to my doctor about some other thing. And I mentioned to him that I was just going to walk away from teaching. And he said to me, come on, I've known you for so many years. You can't just do that. I'm going to give you a month off on sick leave so you got time to think about it. And while I was on sick leave, the government announced that they were giving $50,000 golden handshakes to anybody that wanted to get out. And I already knew I was starting a business in my spare time. And I thought, you know what? It's now or never. So no analysis paralysis. I just walked away.
Wow. And so you took the redundancy package.
Yep. And it was basically, you can't ever come back. If you take this money, you can never come back to a state government job in Queensland.
And that was like the perfect solution to all your problems, because you didn't want to go back.
Well, I knew I was leaving anyway. I was working on starting my own business, but it just accelerated the process. And honestly, I'd like to say thank you to that boy, because it was the best thing that ever happened.
So it sounds like there was no hesitation and there was no fear. You were just ready to go, in
I'm
spite of
usually
all those other reasons not to.
I'm usually the kind of person that just, thinks everything through so much that it takes me forever to make a decision. But I knew I'd actually hit a couple of kids just out of pure frustration and anger, and nothing had happened. But I knew if I stayed in that environment, I was going to be in trouble. And I just said to my wife, I can't go back. And she said, all right, well, don't. And that was it. It was done.
Right.
And that was before I knew about the 50,000. That came in that month that I was on sick leave. I knew I wasn't going back anyway. And then when I saw that headline in the newspaper, I thought, well, this is just the hand of God.
Yeah. Sounds like you need to take a bottle of wine to that doctor as well, hey? Giving you the month off.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Okay. So you left. It was a really good decision for you. You got a nice little payout. So that was a bonus.
Yep.
Tell us what you're doing now, David.
Well, my plan had been that I was going to take some money out of my super to get me through. I figured I needed a year to get my business to the point where it could work for me. So you'd need to rewind back to the late 80s, early 90s. Paul Keating was our treasurer, and we were in the recession we had to have. I had a stay-at-home wife with 3 little children, and I think I was up to my 9th year as a teacher, and every year I got a pay rise. I knew that for 10 years I would get a pay rise, and at the end of 10 years that was it, unless I wanted to sort of do extra study, which I didn't want to do. And I'm struggling to pay the bills, and I'm thinking I've got 1 pay rise left. So I don't think in a year's time when I get that last pay rise that it's going to be so amazing that I suddenly feel like we're financially okay, no money stress, life is a breeze. And I thought, it's not about how much I earn. There's something else that I need to get right when it comes to my money management. And so being someone who likes sitting up late at night and just thinking anyway, I decided to devote my attention to the money problem. Okay. Why do we have money stress, and what causes it? And what can I do to solve the problem? And eventually I worked out that the problem wasn't so much how much I was getting paid. It was that every month when the bank statement came, it said to me, here's how much money you've got right now, and here's what happened last month. And ever since my first pay at work when did I start work? 1975. I had been an anal record keeper. I had kept diligent records of every cent that came and went into my life. And I did that because I wanted to be good with money, and I didn't want to have money stress. And yet here I was having money stress, keeping diligent records, and I'm thinking, why isn't this working? And I realized that every month when that statement came, I would get so frustrated because it would say, here's what happened last month, and I already knew because I'd recorded it, and here's where you are now. And that was so frustrating because we'd had a brand new house. We'd locked in for 3 years at 15% mortgage interest rate. Get that, 15.
Yeah, they were really high back then, weren't they?
Yeah, well, it was 18% variable, and I'd locked in for 3 years at 15%. And I was so worried about not being able to keep this brand new house. And I thought, we wanted to buy some plants to make a garden. We wanted to buy, we've got a house in a block of dirt, and I wanted to turn it into a home, So the bank statement would come and it'd say, you've got $200. And I'd think, well, can I afford to spend some money on some lawn this week, or some plants, or some swings for the kids, or whatever? And I'd always sit there going, I don't really know. I don't know whether I can or should or shouldn't, or will I or won't I? And I would make decisions to buy stuff or not to buy stuff. And then later on find out that I could have, or I shouldn't have, and I got it wrong.
Right, yeah.
And I thought, this is really stupid. Nowhere does it say to me, anybody listening in right now, in less than a minute, you can pick up your phone, log into your banking and see how much money you've got. But there is a number that's missing, and it's that number that was giving me the frustration. It's the one that says, here's how much money you should have in your account today. If you've got these bills and these payments and these things that you've committed to, electricity, telephone, rent, mortgage, whatever, everybody has a magic number that they don't even know about. And when I discovered how to work out what my magic number was, all the money stress disappeared because I knew what my balance needed to be every day. And if I could get ahead, that money that it was like, if I needed to have $800 in the bank today and I had 1,000, I knew I could go shopping with $200 and not stuff our family finances.
Right.
Totally changed our life, took away my money stress. And I thought, I have to share this feeling with other people because it's chalk and cheese. The before was just a stress bucket, and the after was the freedom to choose what I could buy and when I could buy it, and know that everything was okay. And so I put some ads in the paper, budgeting service, and I would go and sit in people's homes at night and say, look, this is what I've done for me. If you're interested, I can do it for you too. And for 3 years, I found myself getting busier and busier. And I had 2 mortgage brokers who kept ringing me up with, go and talk to these people that I spoke today. They need your help.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? This is my ticket out of school teaching.
Mm.
I love this. I absolutely had a passion for helping people get rid of their money stress and take control of their finances. And this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. So 2001, I had a minor appearance on a small TV show that aired only in Brisbane. I think I banked about $12,000 from that one TV appearance.
Wow. Okay.
I thought people want this. This is what I've got to do with, and so I earned one appearance on a current affair in September 2002. So 6 months after I quit teaching, one appearance on a current affair, I banked more money than I had earned in 20 years as a school teacher.
Wow.
In 3 months.
Wow.
So and that was it was a good and it was a bad thing, because without getting into the details, it's artificial. You get an appearance on a current affair, you can't reproduce that, and you can't build a business on that. But it was a great little boost, and it put some money in my bank, and it gave me some time to get my business really going. And I honestly would have to say thank you to that boy for getting me out, because I never want to look back, never go back.
Wow. That's an amazing story. So all that stuff that you'd learn as a teacher, what did you bring from teaching into your new role? And
this is a really important thing, because if I had gone back to my trade after finishing my training to become a teacher, I would never have had the skills at a computer. I would never have had, because I used Excel to do the whole thing when I started. I wouldn't have had any of those skills. I wouldn't have been able to stand in front of a room full of people and do the training that I do.
Yeah.
It had to I had to do those 20 years. 10 would have been better, but I had to do those years to get to the point where I had the skills. And anybody listening in who thinks, I really want to get out of teaching, I can't stand another day in the classroom. The skills that you're developing of the tenacity, all of the preparation and the speaking and all of those computer skills, managing people, being a leader, all of those things are exactly what you need to go and start yourself in whatever it is you decide that you're passionate and you want to do. And don't think you're stuck, because, I've had high highs and I've had some really low lows where I was in tears and said to my wife, we're so broke, I can't pay the bills. But there's no going back. And so it was like, okay, what do I have to change in my business model that will make the difference? And 5 years ago, I had a mentor who said to me, have you ever thought of doing this? And I went, well, I have, but I've never tried it. And I said, okay, let's do it. And it was a total turning point.
Are you going to share what that was? Or is that a secret?
No, it's not. I just didn't know if it was appropriate or not. I sold 30,000 copies of the software that I created to people all over the world. I got invited to speak at a university in England. I've been on stage and TV in the USA. I've spoken all around New Zealand and just about every capital city and minor city in Australia, teaching people how to manage their money using the system I created. And people would come up to me and say, will you teach me how to help people using your system? And I would say, that's a great idea. I'll get onto that and I'll let you know. but I never ever went there because I had a fear of somebody might not be any good at it, that they might fail.
Right.
And this guy said to me, "What? Have you ever thought of this?" And I said, "I've had lots of people say, would I train them to be what I now call spending planners?"
Mm.
He said, "Well, why haven't you done it?" And I said, "Well, because I don't want anyone to fail." And he said to me, "And what makes you think that they mightn't be better at it than you?" And it was like he punched me in the face. It was like, oh. And his next question was, "And how many people have missed out on getting the benefit of what you've created because you're afraid some people might fail?"
Mm.
And it was like a total turning point. And I just emailed out to my list of customers and said, "This is what I've decided to do. Who wants to become a spending planner? Let's change the world together." And I had a whole bunch of people who used my system, changed their life, were really passionate about it, who wanted to come and join me and become spending planners. So I've created the Spending Planners Institute, and I train people to have their own business, helping people sort out their money problems.
Wow. So you're like the trainer now. You're the teacher of all those people.
Well, I always was a teacher. I now get to teach people that want to learn.
Fantastic. Wow. So
it's funny, because I'd stand up in front of a room full of people and say, I was a school teacher for 20 years, but now I'm in front of you guys. I better be careful what I say because you're listening.
Yeah. Nice. So with all that stuff did you have to go and learn some new things, or did you have enough knowledge of your own?
As in financial knowledge, or?
Yeah, financial knowledge.
Well, I started on that journey in the about 1990. By 1995, I developed my spreadsheet and my systems to the point where it was just press a button and it would do all the calculations and give me my spending plan. I used to call it a budget, but now 1995, I thought, you know what? I'm going to register a name for a business, put some ads in the newspaper and see if I can make this work. So I'd already had 5 years of developing and showing it to friends and family members and getting encouraged and being sort of told, you should pursue that. So then when I started going into people's homes for 3 years, I was learning how my system had weaknesses, and like every person I'd go and sit across the kitchen table from, they'd present me with some situation I hadn't thought of. I'd go home and work out the solution. So in those 3 years, I was developing, learning, growing, and getting to the point where I knew exactly what my system needed to be, what people's common problems were, and how to deal with them. And so it was an 8-year journey, I guess. But I would get in my little mini miner on a Saturday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, drive 2.5 hours north, have 3 3-hour appointments, and get home at 10 o'clock that night. And I'd changed 3 families' lives, and I was just loving every moment of it.
So it sounded like it was really energizing for you, David.
Absolute, following my passion. And that would be the one thing that I would say to every one of your listeners. What is it that you love to do? Because I know you don't love school teaching, but what's your special area? How can you take that and turn it into a profession? And the good thing is, as a teacher, you've probably got a fairly secure job, and you've probably got time that you can devote to, like I did after hours. I'd knock off at 3 o'clock. I'd be gone by 3:30, and at 7 o'clock, I'd be sitting across the kitchen table from John and Mary Smith,
Yeah.
I'd get home at 11 o'clock and just so excited because every person I showed what I had done, I think I saw in 3 years, I probably sat across about 80 different kitchen tables, and only 2 people said to me, no, thanks. Everybody else said, wow,
that's a very good client retention, or, rate.
And the 2 people, one was a next door neighbour and one was a young couple that just got married, and they weren't ready to think about being responsible with money. They were in party mode. So,
yeah. Okay. And so, if someone wanted to use your service now, like who are you targeting what you do towards now?
So spending planners, I say it this way: if you're totally flat broke, you could go and see a financial counsellor. If you know you've got surplus income and you don't know what to do with it, you can go and see a financial planner who'll set you up with some kind of an investment strategy.
Yeah.
The 80% of Australians between those two, there is
They don't
no
know.
professional service.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I'm now, with the help of the 80 or so spending planners that I've trained so far, we're creating a new industry that we call spending planning that sits between those two. And just this week, we're launching a new website called spendingplanning.com. And we're going to start promoting that to ordinary, teachers, policemen, nurses, firemen, public servants, anybody who would say, I earn good money, but I've got no idea why. I just seem to be on the treadmill getting nowhere financially. That we can help those people big time, because it's just having a system to follow and a roadmap that makes all the difference.
And so these are the people you're talking about are in these service industries where they're dealing with high stakes. So they're either dealing with children or illness or an emergency situation. And
Pressure.
there's a lot of commonalities there between teachers and police and nurses, I think.
Yep. There's two parts to my, I'm the average ordinary middle income Australian is who spending planners can help the most. The Institute, because I can't extract myself from the Institute trains people, and I'd be looking for ex-school teachers, mortgage brokers, ex-financial planners, because there's lots of them at the moment. Anybody who just has a passion for helping other people and knows that they're good with money, or that they'd like to get good with money, I'd be happy to take them and train them. But the spending planners themselves, they're looking for ordinary, average, middle income Australians who would go, I can't understand why I can't get ahead financially.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And do you work with businesses as well, like small business?
One of my spending planners is from a business background, and she has specialised in business. Actually, a couple of them have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So.
I know with my business, I have a lot of money that goes out on software as service. So like paying for Zoom, for instance, if I pay for LinkedIn Premium, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it sort of trickles out the back door, but it's a lot of money, actually.
The largest amounts of money disappear on the smallest of transactions.
Yeah, and you don't realise, how much you actually need sitting there as a buffer just to take care of those little dribbles of money going out every week. So, I just wondered about that. I think that could be another little, like a niche within the niche.
Well, there are so many niches within the niche. You're right. Yeah. But look, anybody listening who is thinking, I'm really, I've been teaching for 2 days and I'm at the end of my tether, because it could be that quick. Look, some people, it's their passion and that's what they want to do with their life. But for me, I found out pretty quickly it wasn't my passion. I loved manual arts. I loved my subject. I didn't love the classroom and the kids in the classroom and the mayhem and the bedlam and the pressure. And so, find your passion and go for it.
So, David, any regrets about leaving teaching?
The only regret is I should have done it sooner. But I don't think I was ready sooner. But absolutely not. As I said, I've had some pretty low lows in the time since then, because when you run your own business, it's, you live and die by your own decisions and your own dexterity, your ability to think on your feet, which is all things that teachers learn pretty quickly. And so sometimes, like I kept selling software way longer than I should have, because people stopped buying software. And I should have changed the model to a service model rather than a selling software model sooner. And so there were some pretty lean years in there. But as far as regrets, any day that I'm not in front of a classroom full of 14-year-olds is a great day as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, I think we know the answer to the question then.
No regrets.
Okay. So, David, what would you say is the legacy that you want to leave in the world?
I think that's fairly obvious, isn't it? When I leave this world, I hope that there is an industry which is well established called spending planning that will have enough momentum to keep going without me, and that there will be people who become professional spending planners for centuries to come. Because let's face it, you think about all of those problem kids in those classrooms, why are they problem kids? so many come from broken homes where mum and dad don't seem to care about me anymore, so why should I care about me anymore? And they think mum and dad don't care about them anymore because mum and dad have split up. And why did mum and dad split up? Because of money. Yeah. Money stress is the biggest breaker of relationships and homes and the biggest thing that stuffs kids up. I learnt that in 1983 for a kid in grade 8 in 83. A few weeks into 1984, he was in year 9, 14 years old. He just went from being great to being horrible. And every teacher in the school was saying, what's happened to Mark? Yeah. Then I heard he was in trouble with the police around town. And then I found out Dad's moved in with a new woman because his family's busted up, because his business has gone broke. Everything's gone wrong and the kids are suffering. And I just, after that, every time I saw kids that were causing grief and I looked behind the scenes, I discovered that their home life had problems and they were just a reaction to the problems at home. Yeah. So if I can help fix people's money stress, I can save marriages, I can save kids from going off the rails and doing all stupid things that they regret later on. That's a big legacy, I know, but it's a vision that I've got, and you've got to have a big vision. So
that is a wonderful legacy to leave in the world.
Yep.
David, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Lark Song Enterprises with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Do you know someone else who could benefit from hearing more stories of hope and transition from teachers all around the world? Please take a moment to share this and other episodes via your podcast app. Each share helps me reach listeners just like you who can benefit from this content. The Get Out of Teaching podcast is proud to be part of the Experts on Air podcast network. For show notes and other resources, please visit larksong.com.au/podcast.